Welcome to another episode of the Spoon Mob Podcast. This week I am joined by Chase Voelz. He is the CDC, the Chef de Cuisine at Bludorn in Houston, Texas. We had the privilege of eating there back in March, and we ate at a few different places in Houston and Dallas. I think like one place in San Antonio, a couple places in Austin, just kind of on Texas kind of rodeo road trip, as they kind of call it, when you kind of hit all the major cities. But we had the pleasure of eating there, and it was a fantastic meal. As I'll reference kind of in this interview a few times, the portion sizes are large, to say the least, but it's not like gimmicky. The food is still delicious. It's just way more of it than you would ever anticipate. I got a duck à l'orange dish, and it probably was the size of like 2 entrees if that dish was on any other restaurant's menu. So we get into his career, how he got started cooking, all the different places that he worked, how he wound up in Houston, Texas, when he first met Aaron Bludorn, who's the executive chef and owner and founder of the restaurant too as well. Aaron, you might have seen Netflix did that kind of cooking competition thing. He had participated on that. He was kind of he was with Team USA in that, and I think they were kind of like one of the final 4. So he made it pretty far in that Netflix competition, which I don't think they're doing anymore. They only ever did 1 season, but if you're looking for something to watch, that's on there. I think it's from like 2018. It's a good restaurant. We had a great time there. You didn't really know what to expect kind of going in. It was on a lot of different restaurant lists of kind of places to eat or best places in Houston and whatnot. Houston's kind of an odd city to try and get around. It feels like it takes 15 to 20 minutes to get anywhere, even if it's like the next neighborhood over from where you're already at. It feels like it takes 15 minutes. So just be prepared for that if you've never visited Houston. That was kind of a shock to us, where it was just like, why is this taking so long to get over here? Why is everything that you look it up on a map, it's like 20 minutes? And it's like, it looks like it's right there. Just the city is so sprawling and so just wide and everything like that. It just takes a long time to. And then traffic too, when rush hour traffic is a bit of a nightmare there too in Houston. So if you get the pleasure of, traveling to Houston or whatever, I definitely recommend this restaurant, Bludorn. Like I said, we had a great time there. They got a great wine list, cool atmosphere too as well. It's kind of got that New York vibe, but it's in Houston and everything too, with just kind of the energy in the dining room and whatnot. So you can follow Chase on Instagram. His handle is at CVOELZ_. You can also follow the restaurant at Bludorn, BLUDORN HTX. So Bludorn Houston, essentially the abbreviation. You can follow us on Instagram too as well at Spoon Mob. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok too as well. It's either Spoon Mob or Spoon Mob 1 on all those platforms. Make sure to follow, subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast platform that you use. We're on pretty much every platform that you can think of, all the major ones, all the smaller independent ones that mainly deal with Android. We're on YouTube as well. We put all the episodes out a week after they come out on the podcast platforms out on YouTube. So you can find us anywhere. So make sure to subscribe or follow whatever button that they have, just so you don't miss out on any new episodes that we have coming up, and they'll just download straight into your feed as soon as we release them. Come out on Thursdays at 1 a.m. We put them out at 1 a.m. because a lot of people in the hospitality industry kind of get off around that time, or maybe an hour or two before, but you're kind of wired and up. So we kind of, try and take care of the third shifters and give them something to listen to. I'm going to try to wind down. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but, we're trying to think of everybody here. So make sure to check out the website, spoonmob.com, different chef profiles, food pictures, all that stuff is up there. All links to previous episodes too as well, if there's something that you missed or didn't see or something like that, or maybe skipped over or whatever. But without any further delays, here's my conversation with Chef Chase Voelz, the CDC at Bludorn in Houston, Texas. Well, thanks again for agreeing to come on the podcast, taking some time out of your morning here. I like to kind of start with everybody at the beginning of their career. I mean, we had the pleasure of eating at Bludorn back in March. Had a great time, fantastic experience. Portion sizes are, everything's bigger in Texas, but some of the portion sizes that you guys put out there, which I want to get to, are pretty sizable. Before we kind of get into how you wound up down in Texas and everything, take me kind of through your career, how you got started. I mean, originally you're from Indiana, right?
That's right. Yeah. I got started when I was, growing up like 8, 9, 10. I was involved with 4-H. My family was big on, 4-H. And as a part of that, in the summertime, my parents would both be at work, and my sister and I would be spending time at grandma and grandpa's house. And as a part of 4-H, we took, baking and stuff like that. And my grandma would always, always be helping us with that. And we like take these old family recipes and we make them together, and we kind of like practice them per se to take them to the fair to get judged. And that's kind of like how I started cooking, and my love for cooking kind of started there.
How did the judging contest go? I mean, it's all subjective, it's like everybody shows up with an apple pie or something like that, but.
And it's being judged. I mean, what I would think would be just kind of like local people that are involved with the fair. I'm honestly not really sure, but I don't think it's not too serious. It's not as serious as what some of my family members took it at the time,
Your grandma's kind of teaching you all these recipes. Did you ever start kind of working in a restaurant? Was that like your first job, or how'd you get involved?
Yeah. When I was a senior in high school, I got a job at a local spot called Beef O'Brady's, actually. I come to find out it's actually a Florida chain. I didn't know that at the time, so it's kind of funny that it was Columbus, Indiana. So, yeah, I started there and, worked fry station, and it was one of those spots that was kind of like a sports bar. So it had like 6-7 fryers, and you're frying almost everything on the menu was fried. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed my time there, to be honest with you. I really liked the camaraderie in the kitchen and the kind of brotherlyhood, if you will. In general, I love the atmosphere. I love working with the guys, and ultimately that's part of why I chose to go down this path. Yeah, I still love it today.
What made you, I guess, pick Johnson and Wales in Denver? Because like you're from Indiana, Chicago's kind of right there. They have culinary schools too as well. What kind of led to that?
I was online and I just kind of figured out this path that I wanted to take. I was actually enrolled and had gone through orientation at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. I had a roommate. I had my classes. I had everything set up. And then I kind of just spurred this on my parents about a month from school. Like, hey, I think I want to become a chef and go to culinary school. And, at first they were shocked, and I think they didn't know. They've supported me throughout everything. And I think they were just like, okay, well, figure out what the best school is for you, and we'll look into it. And so I researched where some of the best culinary schools were. CIA was one of them, and then Johnson & Wales was on that list. And I looked at the locations, and they'd opened Denver relatively recently at that time. And we have family in Denver, and we're always vacationing in Denver, and I loved the mountains and skiing, and that was kind of a no-brainer that if I was going to go, I wanted to go out there.
I like to ask this question to everybody who comes on the podcast, just because everybody's kind of got a different take on it. So if somebody in your kitchen now comes up to you and says, hey, I'm serious about being a chef, do you think I should go to culinary school? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to really go through, the pros and cons of culinary school, and some of the pros where, you meet a lot of people, you make a lot of connections and networking, and it's a good way to get your feet wet at culinary school. I went to culinary school and I got a bachelor's in food service management. And obviously one of the downfalls is the amount of debt you're in. And that's huge. I would say that for me, looking back at it, yeah, did I have to go? No, I went, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go down that path. So I don't have regret there. Do I think you could still be successful? And if you work in the right kitchen, I believe that you don't have to go to culinary school. If you find the right kitchen, find the right chef, you find the right leaders and mentors. I would say you can learn everything you learn in culinary school in an actual kitchen. That being said, culinary school was good, and it was good for me, and I learned a lot, and I have no regrets, like I said.
Yeah, that's kind of been to each their own kind of situation. It really depends on, like you said, kind of who you can connect with, different kitchens that you can work in and experiences. But the debt thing is something that always kind of comes up with everybody, is like, how much is too much? Is it kind of worth it from that standpoint?
It's a lot. It's a lot, especially you're not getting paid a ton as a wine cook coming out of culinary school. It takes a long time. It's what I'm still paying on.
Right before you graduate, you wind up getting an internship at Cafe Boulud in New York, right? How did that come about? Did you have different options to select from, or how did you go through that process?
I was looking at a couple places at the time, but that one came highly suggested by one of the other chefs that I had at the time, like through culinary school. They suggested I check that place out, and I looked it up, researched it. I sent an email to the restaurant, to Chef Gavin, and ultimately they brought me in for a stage. And yeah, that's kind of how that came about. I sent a resume and all that stuff.
Had you ever been to New York prior to that?
No, my sister was living there. She was going to fashion school out there, and it just kind of, it worked out that she was there, and then I moved there. We actually shared a one bedroom that we converted the living area into my bedroom, and it was like a little shoebox in Queens where we lived and commuted to work, and yeah, that was that.
So working there too, that was the first time you met Aaron, right?
Yeah, he was the executive sous chef and left, and Chef Aaron became the executive chef.
So like with the end of the internship, you're there for a few months. Do you get the opportunity, hey, if you want to stay on, like we have a spot for you, or like how does that all kind of work?
It comes down to, your attitude, how well you work with others, and all that stuff kind of comes into play. And yeah, I was invited to stay on after my internship, and I felt very honored and lucky to have been a part of it.
And then from there, you wind up finding your way to Nashville, right? You wind up at Husk.
Yeah, I mean, after a while, I was missing home. New York was kind of a big grind. After a while, I just realized that New York wasn't for me, and I started, to look at what the next step was for myself. And I missed home, all my entire family, and my best friends were in Indiana, and I want to find somewhere close to home, close enough where I could still, work in a great kitchen for a great chef and great team. I wanted to be somewhere like that, but also be close enough where I could, get away for a day or two. I can go take that like weekend trip back home. In New York, there wasn't much like outside of the city to like take a 2-day trip. It's like Nashville was perfect because it was 3.5 hours from home and close enough. And at the time, Sean Brock was doing a lot of great things in the city, and he just opened up Husk Nashville actually, and I did a stage there and learned a lot. And it was just a different style of cooking. There was a lot of open fire cooking that I was really interested in learning about. So ultimately, like that's what brought me down there.
And at that time, like Nashville's food scene was kind of like, wasn't what it is today. It was definitely on the upswing. So what was kind of like the biggest difference between cooking in New York and cooking in Nashville that you experienced?
Well, when I was at Cafe, we were so lucky to we had a prep cook team. We had people that took care of orders, put them away and placed the orders, and then took care of, basically,
I don't want to say back office stuff, but like some of the administrative stuff almost.
So in Nashville, we didn't really have a prep team. The cooks were responsible for the majority of their mise en place. We had a few people that did prep in the morning and some of that stuff, but the line cooks when they got in were ultimately responsible for the majority of their prep and executing and taking care of that. Getting set up for service, putting away orders. 2 people were in charge of staff meal every day. And it was just, it really taught you a lot about, how to organize your day and your prep day in ways that will be most efficient, because sometimes your prep list was huge and you're scheduling at 1. You have a few short hours of the day to get everything done, put away all the orders and be set up for service. So it really taught you to push and organize your day in a timely manner so you can get ready and be set up on time.
We've had a few Husk alums on the podcast. Who all was kind of in the kitchen with you? Because I know, Brian Baxter, worked there for a time. So I wasn't sure if that was the same time frame that you were there. Because a lot of those people have gone on to open their own restaurants or run restaurants. So there's quite an impressive network that's come from the Sean Brock tree, I guess you could say. Yeah,
Chef Baxter was the chef de cuisine at the time, and Nate Leonard was the executive sous chef. He's opening up South Hall Farm. Yeah, South Hall Farm is outside of Nashville, and it's Drew McLeod. He's a chef in Asheville. Taylor Hester, he helped open Mason Yaki in New York. He's got a restaurant now in Maine. Taylor Zollner was another cook there at the time. She's a CDC at Lazy Bear in San Francisco, and several people who are still involved with, Chef Sean's ventures in Nashville. A lot of great cooks in that kitchen that have gone to do great things.
Listing all the people that you did and kind of where they're at now, was that a kind of byproduct of, everybody wanting to work, with or at a Sean Brock restaurant, or just kind of, that magical kind of time where just everybody kind of came together and you wound up having like all this talent in the kitchen at once at different levels on the line?
I mean, I definitely think that the systems in place there contributed to people learning a lot, growing, in their culinary arts career per se. Chef Nate, Chef Baxter, I still keep in touch with them, and they've been great mentors to me. And I think that the way they push us and that the responsibility you had as a line cook there, I think as a new cook, it really taught you to grow up fast. I think it was the system and the restaurant that really helped people.
So after time in Nashville there at Husk, you wind up going to Chicago. What led to going there?
I was just thinking about at the time, what my next step is. And again, Chicago is also close to home. And I ultimately met my wife at the time in Nashville, and she moved to Chicago first. And I spent about a year more in Nashville and doing the long distance things for a while. And I was just thinking about, if we're going to stay together, I'm going to have to make a move up there. And, looked at restaurants, and I saw that the Alinea Group was opening up this open fire concept called Royster. Hey, what's up? Called Royster. And, they did open fire stuff like how we did at Husk. And that was really intriguing. And I love cooking over the fire, plus the Alinea Group, working for a chef like Chef Hackett's. It was a great opportunity that I wanted to kind of pursue and jump on, and went up there, do a stage, and loved it. They had just opened, so they were just kind of getting in the groove as well.
Now, you were there too when they get awarded a Michelin star, right? What was that like?
That was really cool. I mean, it was rewarding, even as a young cook, from the bottom up, getting that accolade. It was, really about the whole team, and knowing that, you contributed to that in some way, shape, or form. It was very rewarding, and it felt awesome. And I remember that day, Chef Curtis Duffy coming in the restaurant and during our prep day, and he walked through and shook everyone's hand and said congratulations. And I just thought that was really cool. Seeing other chefs could come in and congratulate our team. Yeah, it was pretty cool. A pretty cool time.
What is your take on Michelin stars and awards? Because every chef's different, and some chefs, I think a lot of chefs really, it's great to get the recognition, but that's not why we do it. That's not, why I decided to become a chef, was to pursue awards and stuff like that. But if it's a byproduct of what I'm doing, that's great. Is that kind of your feeling too on the subject?
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's really not about the awards at all. It's about the love for what you're doing, and getting recognition is great, but what really matters is your team, and knowing that you're doing your best and you're doing what you love, and just making people happy essentially is what it is. Cooking food and loving what you cook and serving what you love, and I think that's really what it's all about. Working at restaurants that have gotten Michelin stars is great, and it was a cool thing, but at the end of the day, those don't really matter, I don't think, too much. I think it's good not to take them too seriously, because, they come and go, I guess, you know what I mean? Rewards.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think this is like 2 years later, and then it was kind of gone or whatever. And the weird system with, whenever like the CDC or main chef kind of leaves, then it's like you lose a star and all that stuff. But also kind of during your time at Royster, I mean, that's when you become a sous chef really for the first time too, right?
Yeah.
What was like the biggest challenge with managing other chefs, other cooks, on the line, and being a sous chef for the first time?
as a cook there for so long, I worked up to, meat station. I've been on meat for a long time. And I think the biggest challenge was, stepping into that management role amongst other cooks that I'd been cooking alongside with for a while, kind of earning a different level of respect, I guess, as a young manager and sous chef amongst them. I think that was probably the most difficult.
Is it similar to almost like an office job when someone gets promoted to, office manager or something out of like, this pool of like 10 people and there's probably like, 5 people that were interested in the position. And then like, cause like sometimes in that dynamic, you can have like some people are like a little resentful and some people are like, well, why did I get passed over or whatever like that. Does that happen, in that kind of kitchen environment too, in a situation like that? And I'm not saying like that happened to you, but like that, of like, that's a possibility, right?
Yeah. I mean, in the kitchen, like on the line and stuff like that, people getting moved to a different station or whatever. I mean, that's always going to happen. But ultimately, I think that there's two sides of everything. And there may be several people that are proven and that deserve to be promoted or moved off. But ultimately, it's about, understanding that they're still needed at where they're at and their value is still high. They're still valuable. Looking at one side of it that, like, for example, like Garde Manger, we have a team of like 4 or 5 people, right? Past that, we have a couple stations that they may progress to before they go to, say, fish and meat. So, we can't just pull like 3 or 4 people off at a time. We pull one person off and it's about, there's a few others that may also deserve it. And it's not really about, oh, this person's better than that person. It's timing. There's a lot of factors that go into it, and it's reassuring that their value and their contribution to the restaurant, the fact that we still need those leaders on those stations to train and to show new, young, aspiring cooks the system and the way we do things, and making sure we have a foundation on that station still to instill that in younger new cooks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't drain your talent and resources from one section. The whole product suffers and you have to space it out kind of. So up to that kind of point in time, you had worked for or at a restaurant that was kind of founded or run by, Daniel Boulud, Sean Brock, Grant Achatz, all those restaurants are part of kind of what they were going on. Was that by design on your end? Like you always wanted to work for certain chefs, or was it just kind of happenstance that it just worked out that way?
Yes and no. It wasn't about working for the chef as it was working for some of the best leaders that I can surround myself with and the best teams. And that's what I really wanted, because I knew if I was going to grow, if I was going to become the best chef that I could ultimately be, I can only do that by working with the best around me. I didn't see specifically Daniel Boulud's name or Sean Brock or Grant Achatz. It was about what they represented in their companies. And it was about their team. It was about, the chefs that learned and worked under them and working for them and learning under those guys that ultimately represent those people, kind of taking lessons and taking, techniques and things along the way and seeing how they lead their kitchens and taking that and learning from it, from each one of them.
So eventually you find your way down to Houston. How did that opportunity come up to work at Bludorn? Like, did Aaron reach out to you? Did you hear through the grapevine that he was opening his own spot?
Chef Aaron actually, he reached out to me and he told me he was opening up the spot. And since leaving Cafe, Chef Aaron and I, every so often shoot each other a text and see how each other was doing. We kept in touch actually as well. We were in a fantasy football league for a while together. And yeah, he reached out to me when I was in Chicago and said, hey, he had plans on opening up a restaurant in Houston and wanted to know if I was interested, and ultimately brought me and my wife down and showed us around the city. We've never been to Texas before. So yeah, that was kind of how that came about.
When you guys first visit, Houston, obviously one of the questions that you guys probably have is like, could you live here? Could you envision living here? So what was it that you guys kind of found about Houston that you're like, yeah, I could move here and live here and this would work?
Yeah, I mean, Houston is kind of under the radar as far as like big cities go and destinations. But What I loved about Houston right away was the weather. Coming from the Midwest and from Chicago, it gets very cold, and I've never been a huge fan of the bitter winters. And down here, the weather's so nice, and in the wintertime, it's almost like wintertime's patio season. And it's a big change, and I really like that. The food is another thing that was a factor. Such a close proximity to the ocean. You got all kinds of great seafood coming right from the Gulf, and you got great Mexican food. You got Cajun. You got Creole. You got barbecue. It's a different element, kind of, in this part of Texas than what you find. You certainly find it in Chicago, but I guess it's just not as find it as much there as. Here it's kind of a part of the city. It's everywhere. The Viet Cajun, the Vietnamese food, yeah, it's really cool. So yeah, there's that. It's the location was being so close to Austin and Dallas and San Antonio and New Orleans, and you're a 2-hour flight to Cancun. The location's amazing, but really, I mean, the people down here, they're so gracious, and the people of Houston, the community. The restaurant community, you have Southern Smoke down here, and people like Chris Shepard that just give back to the industry so much, and being surrounded by that love that Houston has, it's second to none.
The restaurant opened, I think, August of 2020 officially, right? Was that always the targeted date, or were originally you guys supposed to open, and then obviously the pandemic happened and delayed stuff, or?
I'm not really sure if the opening date got pushed, but I know that I was supposed to be down there earlier than what I was, and that obviously got pushed because of COVID. I believe that opening date got pushed ultimately. I think that it did get pushed, and COVID did have something to do with that, but we also opened kind of in the middle of COVID too. That was all still happening and going on. So that was a big, that was a big decision by Chef Aaron. It worked out ultimately.
Did you move before the pandemic started, or did you have to move during?
It was right when it first started. We had actually broke our lease in Chicago, and we're looking to move down here within the month. And then that happened, and we kind of veered and went, okay, obviously the restaurant is going to have to be put on pause right now, so we just broke our lease, and we're like, okay, well, what are we doing now? Because we don't have obviously any work. So we went to live with Nikki's parents in Greenville, South Carolina for a few months before coming down here.
And just kind of hung out and tried to make the best of the situation as you could.
Hung out and played cards, and just kind of we packed all our stuff, moved it there, and then a couple months later packed it back up and moved to Houston.
This is pretty much the first restaurant that you were part of the opening for, right? Because Royster kind of had already opened before you joined. Yeah,
well, Royster had opened probably about 4 or 5 months before I got there. So yeah, this was my first real opening.
What was kind of the biggest challenge or biggest takeaway that you have from going through, the opening of a restaurant, trying to separate, obviously it's the first time you do it, and then it's also these circumstances of having a pandemic going on too as well that kind of throws other stuff on top. But is there anything that when you reflect on that time that you're surprised about or didn't expect or anything?
I wouldn't say surprised. There obviously it has its challenges, and I wouldn't say anything difficult. I would say a challenge. Being so new to the city and not being familiar with, purveyors or having relationships with any, contacts or anything like that. It's kind of starting from scratch. And, Chef Aaron really helped me with that and got me in touch with some local purveyors and people we would ultimately do business with, and setting up accounts, and, setting up our systems here in the kitchen, and just simple things like, where are we gonna store these things? Where are we gonna store this or that? And hiring a whole brand new team and going through those interviews, and not having a kitchen to see stages work or how well they work with the team, or anything like that. It's just kind of hiring based on resumes and stuff like that, and bring an entire new team in all at once. Even management, we're all new, and just kind of going through opening together, you have growing pains, obviously, and there's bumps along the road, but I wouldn't say it was difficult per se. I guess having Chef Aaron and Sharif and having a great, team and a great chef to work for, I guess kind of made it, he kind of made it easier for me to do my job. So I would say, I would say that there are those challenges.
The vibe of the dining room, at least at the dinner time, it's kind of got a New York feel to it. Like it's got that like lively kind of loud energy. It's not like you can't hear yourself think or anything loud, but you can tell there's people there and people are eating and people are moving and conversations are happening. Like it has that kind of New York feel. Was that designed to be that way on purpose, or was that like a byproduct of just the space and how it just kind of worked out?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think ultimately, Chef Aaron, Sharif, I think that's kind of the atmosphere that they would, like, best case scenario, that's what we wanted ultimately. And that wouldn't happen for a little bit, obviously, with COVID. But ultimately, like having that open dining room and being able to see the kitchen and the music, and once it gets busy, it's just kind of like the energy in the dining room. You can feel it. And I think it's a little bit of both.
So with the menu, one of the dishes we got when we were there was like a duck dish, and it is a giant piece of duck breast. Like it is huge. Like, so is that on purpose too as well? Or is that just because of the purveyors and stuff that you use that you wind up having some portion sizes that are, just kind of this giant size,
It's kind of by design, it's something that's different down here that, you see is a lot of people, they like bigger portion sizes, and that's also something that we used to do at Royster as well. A lot of the dishes, not a lot, but there were definitely dishes on the menu that if you're really hungry, you could probably eat the whole thing or take it home, or you could share it amongst 2 or 3 people, and that's a part of the menu down here, at least somewhat. You could. If you're really hungry, you could eat the whole thing, or you could easily share it with family or friends, with a few people. So I would say that's partly by design.
With the menu, how often you guys kind of change things based on seasonality? Because the seasons are a little bit different in Texas because of the climate and everything. You can kind of stretch things a little bit longer, right?
Yeah, it depending. Yeah, but we do like to change the menu seasonally, so about 4 times a year.
You guys also do, I think, a decent amount of guest chef dinners, collaborations. When you guys decide on doing something like that, how do you approach it? Is it just getting the vibe of the other chef and figuring out kind of what they want to do and how that fits into what you guys do well? Or, is it just kind of going in with a set plan of like, hey, we should try and do this because it's out of our comfort zone? Like,
yeah, a couple things I think go into that. And one is, we want to do a dinner that's fun and that's going to attract, Houstonians to come in and eat food that we don't typically eat here. And it's from a different chef, right? And we've done like, Mexican cuisine, we've done Asian cuisine, we've just barbecue.
African cuisine, you guys, I think, did a Senegal, right?
Yeah. Our dinners, we usually are doing food that we don't typically cook here. And that's kind of the biggest thing, to do something different. And not only is that for our guests and the people who come into this restaurant and come in frequently, it's, giving a little bit different of a vibe and different cuisine, different cooking styles. And it's also, for the staff and the chefs in the back of the house, the cooks and the team, to see something different, get inspired by another chef's, cuisine and what they cook, and learning new techniques and things like that. It's really for, the guest chef dinners are kind of for everybody, and they're just all fun. But I would say, ultimately it's about, doing something different than that we don't typically do here. And the other, you asked how we go about, finding a chef or whatever. And, a lot of these chefs that come in, Chef Aaron is, friends with, or, has a relationship with, or, as friends at the restaurant or, something like that.
You guys do, I think, brunch on Sundays.
Yeah.
Are you a brunch guy? Because I think most chefs are not. Most chefs, I think they start out and doing the omelets and stuff somewhere along the lines when they worked at a hotel or something like that, and then they kind of like never want to go back to it. So, are you a enjoy brunch chef, or are you like yeah, we have it, but it's not my favorite thing to have to be doing sometimes.
I don't mind it. I'm indifferent.
Did you ever consider, in your career when you were coming up, you did stages here, but you never went overseas? Was that not something that you wanted to do, or?
No, honestly, going overseas for me it was just a little too far. I wanted to stay in the States.
Does your mom still send you Duke's Mayo for Christmas? She's done it a couple times.
No, because we have Duke's down here.
Was that the thing? It was like it just wasn't available where you were at, kind of thing?
In New York, it wasn't available in New York. You don't see Dukes up there. It's Hellman's, I guess.
So that's the only way you could get it at the time, but now you can get it down in Texas.
Oh yeah.
Your family, I think you guys have a farmland plot from great grandfather that like he bought back in like 1875. Is that someday, or you plan on doing anything with that? Making it an active kind of farm, or is that just a cool story to have in kind of the family lineage?
Yeah, it's a cool family lineage. He bought that land in 1875, and a couple of the barns that are actually still there were built back near that time. Nowadays, I mean, it is still a functioning farm, but our family doesn't farm it anymore. Yeah, we have other people come and farm it, but I expect it to be, passed down in my family, I guess, to my dad or to me. And, yeah, I mean, I would love to make sure it's taken care of. Obviously, if one day I acquired it, I would not look to be selling it. I'm trying to find somebody who would take care of it.
Will you guys ever do another edition of the hot sauce that you guys did?
The Bludorn hot sauce? Yeah. So it's actually available for purchase online, I believe, through our website. And we see the restaurant too.
Yeah, I didn't see it on the website the other day, so I was assuming that it was just out of stock, like coming in back in the season kind of thing.
From time to time, we try to catch it. Right now, we're trying to bring in all the peppers we can to really bulk up for the winter time.
What's next for you, professionally? I mean, obviously you're running a restaurant down there in Houston, but any aspirations of ever opening a restaurant of your own one day somewhere down the line or anything like that?
Right now, at this time, I'm not really looking that far in advance. It's just being here and running this team and the restaurant here. I haven't really thought about that far down the line. Early in my career, as a young chef, you always think about having my own restaurant, whatever. But yeah, right now I'm just having a great time running Bludorn and learning a lot about the ins and outs of the business aspect of the restaurant. And if that time ever came, I still have lots to learn. And right now it's just staying put and growing this team and continuing the Bludorn way.
So we have a handful of more questions for you. This question comes from the previous guest on the podcast, tea sommelier Ashley Lim of Mansa Tea in New York City. Her question she left behind was, why aren't you offering tea pairings on your menu? Does tea make sense for Bludorn, or is it just kind of the clientele doesn't really gravitate towards it? She was curious as to why more restaurants don't have tea, available kind of to the customer base.
I haven't really thought about that. Why don't we serve tea? I would say at Bludorn and in what we do right now, it doesn't make sense for the clientele, I guess. I don't know how to put this eloquently. We have tea available. Our guests are not requesting, they're not coming in and requesting tea. There's not, the demand from our clientele is not, it's not really there. I don't know.
That's the answer. Like, it is what it is. It's not that you guys wouldn't do it or anything. It's just that,
it's something that wasn't in the plan for the restaurant. We haven't had it, and there hasn't been a substantial demand for it where we would make a shift and put it on. And that's what's wouldn't if there was, but we just hadn't had it, and that's just simply not part of what we do.
What's a question you want to leave behind for the next guest? Can be anything.
When you're outside the restaurant or, wherever bar or wherever this person may come from, their workplace, what is their favorite thing to eat on their days off? Where do they go? What do they get?
So this next question comes from one of our listeners. They wrote in, what's been the biggest challenge or difference working with Gulf seafood versus freshwater from possibly your Chicago and Indiana days, or even Atlantic seafood from, when you're over in New York?
Well, for me, being down here, it's just been the biggest challenge. I don't know if there's been a challenge, but I would say the difference is just the proximity and the locality of our fish. We've always strived to get our fish and seafood as much as possible from the Gulf because it's right there, oysters included. So the oyster part was big. I haven't really, you don't see Gulf oysters really in many places other than around the Gulf. And that was something cool that we had the opportunity to showcase is oyster farms around the Gulf, because there are some really great ones. It's what's cool about it also is that, we got fishermen that sometimes just are dropping things off, and hitting me up or my executive sous chef up about product that, they're getting. Right now we're getting stone crabs from Galveston, which I and some people here never even knew that stone crabs actually came from Galveston. We had a guest one time that was like, I'm from Galveston. I never saw stone crabs. These can't be from Galveston. They're from Florida because, they're normally from Florida. But no, we have this fisherman, Captain Fred. His name's Captain Fred. Drops off every week a couple bags of stone crabs that he caught an hour away in Galveston. So, yeah, I wouldn't say there's anything difficult about it. If anything, it's different, and it's more opportunity that's coming from being so close to the Gulf. You know what I mean?
So this last set of questions we ask to everybody who comes on the podcast. So nice compare and contrast across all the episodes and everybody. Who would you say is the biggest influence on your cooking career thus far?
That would be Chef Aaron, definitely. Staying in touch since I left Cafe, and working and learning under him at Cafe, and staying in touch since then, and giving me an opportunity to come and lead a kitchen, and having that trust in me despite being away from obviously Cafe for so long. We got a fly trap right here, so it's like whoa. Yeah, just having that trust in me, it's a no-brainer that he's had the most impact on on my professional career.
What's one kitchen item that's not a knife that you can't live without?
A spoon.
Restaurant you'd recommend that isn't your own. So scenario I usually give is, person gets stuck overnight at the Houston airport. You guys are closed. They reach out to you. Hey, we're stuck here. Where should we go eat?
I'd go to Truth Barbecue. Something simple, something quick, something delicious. And Texas.
Bucket list travel destination, bucket list restaurant. So any place you haven't been to yet that you still want to visit, and any place that you haven't had the chance to eat at yet, but you still want to dine at and experience one day.
What first comes to mind is Savannah, Georgia. Haven't been to Savannah. Been to Charleston. Love that area of the country. And Savannah because my chef and one of my mentors, Andrew Brochu, Chef Brochu from Royster, moved down there, and he's opening up his own restaurant called Brochu's in Savannah with another one of the sous chefs at Royster, Dave. Yeah, they're opening it together, and it's kind of been a long time coming. Like they were about to open something in Chicago, and then COVID happened, and yeah, so ultimately they're moving along with Chef Brochu's restaurant down there. That's where I would want to go when that opens in Savannah.
Craziest thing you've seen happen in a restaurant while you're working?
At Royster, a couple times, actually. Our Ansel system shut off, but one time there was a fire on the roof, and I was working hard. Our hood vent system just, you heard it go boom, 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 and it just shut off. We're cooking. It was like a Saturday night, and me and my station partner kind of looked at each other, and we were like, did this thing shut off? We had a dining room full of people. It was an open kitchen, and we're cooking all with fire, right? So there's smoke starting to build, and we figured out it was off, because smoke started to kind of like filter out into the dining room, and it started to get cloudy, and like front of the house, the managers were coming to the kitchen. Like this all happened in seconds. Like, what's good? Why is the dining room smells like smoke? And so somebody ran outside and figured out that there was a fire on the roof and above us were apartments. So somebody's apartment had, something, I don't know to this day what exactly happened, but it's like, what do you do in that situation? We got a dining room full of people and we can't cook anymore. So tried to, we calmly got as calmly as we could, got everybody out of there. There's a fire in the building. And so everybody went out, kind of tried. We were outside for hours while we watched the fire department go into the building, figure out what's wrong, put out the fire. That whole situation, and I think we were outside for a solid 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Everybody was just kind of standing there waiting. That was one of them. That was one of the things, I think.
Food or drink guilty pleasures? Is there anything that is terrible for you? Fast food, candy, whatever, but you just can't help yourself?
Taco Bell, Kit Kat, Red Bull.
So since you answered Taco Bell, and that's we get that answer a decent amount of time, what is your Taco Bell order?
Cheesy Gordita Crunch. I'll get every time.
Favorite Instagram account you follow?
I enjoy getting a laugh sometimes out of the Sismans. Yeah, the restaurant memes. Yeah, those are pretty funny.
Favorite dish, favorite thing you ever cooked, created, looking back on your career thus far, you can kind of almost point to this as being, your aha moment. Like you created this thing and you knew, from that point that you could be a professional chef.
I don't know. I don't know if there's one thing that I created and then something that I put on here. We do fried chicken every last Tuesday of the month. We do a fried chicken dinner. We do either half or whole fried chicken, bone in. We serve that with a couple sides, biscuits. And that's really taken off. That's become pretty popular. I guess I would probably say that.
I'm an Anthony Bourdain fan, but not everybody is. If you were, is there a moment, episode, scene, something that stands out about him? Or if you weren't, is there anybody who was like a culinary personality that was on TV that you kind of gravitated towards coming up through your career, whether it's a Bobby Flay or a Guy Fieri or Emeril, anything like that?
I'm also an Anthony Bourdain fan. You asked for a moment. Obviously, Kitchen Confidential was a very popular book back whenever I was deciding whether I want to be a chef or not. But I also got the opportunity to go see him speak with Eric Ripert in Santa Barbara one time way back. It was in probably like 2010 or like 2010. And I thought that was really cool. Like I was in culinary school at the time and seeing a couple leaders in the industry, talk about it. That was a pretty cool thing to see.
Where can people find you? Social media, website, reservations, plug everything.
I'm on Instagram. Find me through the restaurant website. Don't have Facebook. Honestly, that's pretty much it. I don't really use a lot of social media platforms. Really, just Instagram. Yeah, through the restaurant website.
You can find the restaurant Bludorn on Instagram too as well. I think it's Bludorn HTX. But you guys are open, I think, every day of the week, right? Yeah. Monday through Sunday.
Sunday for 2 services, and our bar opens at 4. So our bar opens a little before our normal service starts. But Monday through Sunday for brunch and dinner.
And then reservations on the website. You can find the hot sauce there sometimes in the shop when it's in stock. And then you guys have usually have a couple events going on that are available through the website too, guest chef dinners or whatever. And then obviously the fried chicken thing last Tuesdays of every month that you mentioned too. So yeah, we had a great time there back in March when we were able to stop in, ordered a bunch of different stuff, risotto, I think the duck. I can't remember what else we ordered too, but portion sizes were surprising, even though everything's bigger in Texas, as they say, but the food was delicious too as well. It wasn't like, oh, you're getting all this food and it's like, no, the food was fantastic. The sauce work, the flavors, combinations, it's all amazing. So, I couldn't recommend it enough to anybody who's headed to Houston or stopping through or anything, especially with you guys being open, every day, where it's really hard to find restaurants that are open Mondays for sure. And then Sunday and Tuesdays can kind of be a crapshoot depending on, where you're traveling to and everything. So awesome restaurant. It's cool to see, I think you guys also do on the Instagram account, you guys do a really great job of highlighting the different people that work there, that are part of the team too, where I think a lot of restaurants don't. And, some of that is because, if there's change in staff and turnover so much, stuff like that too. But you guys do a good job of mixing in, who's doing what kind of behind the scenes and within operations, but also putting out, food photos and stuff like that too as well. So it's definitely worth a follow too, and appreciate you coming on, and we'll be stopping in whenever we're back traveling through Texas.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Big thanks again to Chef Chase Voelz for coming on the podcast, taking some time. Big thanks to the media and marketing and PR department over at Bludorn for helping coordinate everything with scheduling days and times and everything. So shout out to them too as well, because obviously couldn't have made this happen without them. Again, you can follow them on Instagram at cvoelz_ and also at Bludorn HTX for the restaurant account there too as well. You can follow us on Instagram at SpoonMob. Make sure to check out the website, spoonmob.com. You can write in questions, comments, feedback either through the website or directly to spoonmob@yahoo.com is our email address. And make sure to just subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform that you're using. We appreciate all the word of mouth recommendations. Recently had a couple things come through that were all positive feedback and everything like that. So really appreciate that stuff. And we even got invited to kind of a friends and family thing for a new restaurant here in Columbus, Tupelo Honey. And that was an amazing experience too, that we got to go kind of try some of the food there firsthand before they opened their first Columbus location. So appreciate everybody reaching out and, those that do and thinking of us. When a chef is opening something or, looking to promote something or just, trying to get the word out about, their restaurant that's been in business for a few years too as well. So we're here to help. We want to have, cool people on, interesting conversations, people that we believe in that are cooking great food or pushing the boundaries or doing something interesting. Don't really want to have anybody who's kind of a run of the mill thing or, we try and make sure that everybody that we've had on, and I think it's probably, it's got to be like 95% that had their food firsthand. So we can kind of vouch for like, this is something that, we really enjoy and would recommend it. So if you're looking for any restaurant recommendations, I recommend just going through the website, going through all the guests that we've had. Any of those places I'd recommend without a doubt. That is it for this week. Again, appreciate everybody listening. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here listening for a while, appreciate the continued support. A lot of cool things in the works too as well. So we got a bunch of different guests lined up and more on the way. And super excited about all those interviews and episodes that we're going to be releasing too as well. So appreciate everybody. Thank you for all the support and we will talk to you guys next week.